Lucille Ball was standing in front of 300 people on a soundstage in Hollywood when the director called for a 5-minute break, and she walked to her dressing room knowing that when she came back out, she would have to be funny. The decision had been made that morning. The papers would be filed on Monday. Nobody on set knew yet. What happened in those 5 minutes and what she did when she came back out is a story that begins with the end of a marriage and ends with one of the greatest performances in television history. It was a Friday in March 1960, and the production of I Love Lucy was filming its final episode at Desilu Studios on a soundstage that had been home to 179 episodes over 9 years. The show that had changed television, that had proven a woman could carry a comedy, that had made Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz two of the most recognizable people in America, was ending. The audience didn't know why it was ending. The press releases had talked about wanting to pursue other projects, about natural conclusions, about 9 years being a good run. None of that was the truth. The truth was sitting in Lucille Ball's dressing room that morning in the form of a conversation she and Desi had finished at 6 a.m., 3 hours before call time. The marriage was over, not ending. Over. Past tense in a way that left no room for the kind of reconciliation they had managed before, the kind of temporary fix that had kept them together through previous rough patches. This was different. This was the conversation where two people who had built an empire together and raised 2 children together and created something that 60 million Americans watched every week looked at each other across a kitchen table and said the words that make a thing officially finished. The decision was mutual in the way that decisions are mutual when both people have run out of alternatives. Desi had said it first. Lucille had agreed. They had sat in silence for a long time. Then Lucille had looked at the clock and said she had to be on set in 2 hours. She had driven to the studio alone. She had gone through hair and makeup. She had smiled at the crew. She had run her lines with the script supervisor. She had done all of this with the particular autopilot competence of someone who has been doing the same job for 9 years and whose body knows what to do, even when their mind is somewhere else. The cast and crew of I Love Lucy had worked together long enough to read each other. Vivian Vance, who played Ethel Mertz and who had been Lucille's closest friend on set since the first season, had looked at her during the table read and known something was wrong. She didn't ask. Lucille Ball was not a woman who invited questions about her personal life on a working set. William Frawley noticed nothing. The director, Jerry Thorpe, who had directed 40 episodes and knew Lucille's rhythms, noticed but attributed it to the weight of filming a final episode. The scene they were filming was a dinner party, Lucy and Ricky hosting Fred and Ethel. The blocking had been set, the jokes had been refined, the audience of 300 people was seated and ready. Lucille Ball took her position at the dining room table and felt something crack inside her chest in a way that made it hard to breathe. She looked at Desi. He was standing off camera where he always stood when he wasn't in a scene. Their eyes met for less than a second. He looked away first. The director called action. Lucille Ball delivered the first line. Her voice was steady. The studio audience laughed. She delivered the second line. Another laugh. The scene was working. Everything was working. Except that she couldn't breathe properly and her hands were shaking and she could feel something building in her throat that was going to come out as either a scream or a sob. And neither of those things could happen in front of 300 people and 40 crew members and cameras that were rolling. She made it through 4 minutes of the scene. Then she stopped mid-line, looked at the director and said, "I need 5 minutes." The director looked at her. Jerry Thorpe had directed enough television to know when someone was asking versus when someone was telling. This was telling. He called for a break. Lucille Ball walked off the set. She didn't run. She didn't make a scene. She walked with the same purposeful stride she always walked with, across the soundstage, past the crew, and past the audience who was murmuring now in the confused way audiences murmur when something has gone off script, through the door that led to the hallway to her dressing room. She closed the door. She locked it. She sat down in the chair in front of the mirror and looked at herself under the lights that made everything visible. The Lucy Ricardo hair, the Lucy Ricardo makeup, the Lucy Ricardo costume. She looked at all of it and started to cry. This was not the first time Lucille Ball had cried in a dressing room. 50 years in show business had produced plenty of reasons to cry and plenty of dressing rooms to cry in. But this was different. This was not frustration or exhaustion or the particular stress of a difficult scene. This was grief. She cried for 2 minutes, and then she stopped because there were 3 minutes left, and crying was not going to change anything. The marriage was over. The show was ending. In 3 minutes, she had to go back out there and be funny. She stood up. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red. Her face was blotched. The makeup was ruined. She had 3 minutes. She opened her makeup kit. She worked quickly, with the specific efficiency of someone who has been doing their own makeup since before there were makeup artists on set, who knows exactly what their face needs and how long it takes to fix it. Cold water first. Pat dry. Concealer under the eyes. Powder. More powder. Check the eyes. Check the nose. Check the mouth. 2 minutes left. She stood up. She walked to the small window in her dressing room that looked out over the parking lot. She could see her car. She could see Desi's car. She could see the street beyond the studio gates. She could leave. She could walk out of this building and get in her car and drive away and never come back. She didn't move. 1 minute left. She turned away from the window. She looked at herself in the mirror one more time. She was 48 years old. She had been in show business since she was 15. She had been told she wasn't pretty enough for movies. She had been fired from more jobs than most people ever got. She had clawed her way up through chorus lines and B-movies and radio shows that nobody remembered. She had built this, not just the show, the studio. Desilu Productions was the largest independent television production company in America. She and Desi owned it together. They had bought it together. They had built it together. And now they were ending together. But the show still had 30 more minutes to film. The audience was still in their seats. The crew was still on the clock. The cameras were still loaded. The scene still needed to be finished. She unlocked the door. She opened it. She walked back down the hallway, back onto the soundstage. The crew looked at her. The audience looked at her. Jerry Thorpe looked at her. She walked back to her mark at the dining room table. "I'm ready," she said. Jerry Thorpe looked at her face. Whatever he saw there made him not ask any questions. He called action. Lucille Ball picked up exactly where she had left off. Mid-sentence, same energy, same timing. The line landed. The audience laughed. She delivered the next line. Bigger laugh. She hit the physical gag that came next. A bit of business with a serving tray that required precise timing and complete commitment. She nailed it. The audience roared. For the next 30 minutes, Lucille Ball gave one of the best performances of her career. She was sharper than usual, faster. Every joke landed harder. Every reaction was bigger. Every moment of physical comedy was executed with precision that made it look effortless. The audience was losing their minds. The crew was watching in the particular way crews watch when they know they're seeing something special. Vivian Vance noticed it too. There was something different, something desperate and brilliant and slightly unhinged in the performance. She played into it. The scene got better. They finished the episode at 9:45 p.m. The standing ovation from the audience lasted 3 minutes. The crew applauded too. Which almost never happened. Lucille Ball stood on the set and smiled and waved and thanked them and held it together until the stage manager dismissed the audience. Then she went back to her dressing room. She took off the costume. She took off the makeup. She took off Lucy Ricardo and put back on Lucille Ball. She drove home alone. Desi had left hours earlier. She pulled into the driveway. His car was there. She sat in her car for a long time before going inside. The episode aired 6 weeks later on April 1st, 1960. It was watched by 44 million people. The reviews called it one of the finest episodes of the series. TV Guide said Lucille Ball had never been better. Nobody knew. Not the reviewers, not the audience, not most of the crew. Nobody knew that they were watching a woman whose marriage had ended that morning, and whose heart was broken, who had cried in her dressing room and then walked back out and made 300 people laugh. The divorce was announced 2 months later. The press coverage was massive. America's favorite couple, the end of Lucy and Ricky. The tabloids ran photos. They speculated about who was to blame. Lucille Ball did not comment. She showed up to work. She launched a new production company. She kept building. Vivian Vance asked her once, years later, about that day, about the 5 minutes in the dressing room. Lucille Ball looked at her for a long time. "I made a choice," she said. "I could fall apart or I could do my job. I chose to do my job." "How did you do it?" Vivian asked. "I looked at myself in the mirror and I remembered that I've been through worse. And I decided that this was not going to be the thing that broke me. Not in front of 300 people, not on camera, not ever." She paused. "The pain doesn't go away because you decide to be professional. But you can choose what you do with it. I chose to put it into the work. That scene we filmed after the break, that was the most honest thing I've ever done. It was all real, just not in the way the audience thought it was real." Jerry Thorpe, the director, told the story years later. He had known something was desperately wrong that day, but he had made the decision not to ask. "She asked for 5 minutes," he said. "I gave her 5 minutes. She came back and gave us magic. That's what professionals do. They show up even when showing up is the hardest thing in the world." The episode is still in syndication. You can watch it right now. Lucille Ball making 44 million people laugh on the same day she decided to end her marriage. You won't see the pain. You won't see the 5 minutes. You won't see anything but Lucy Ricardo being funny. That's what she wanted you to see. That's what she chose to give you. And that choice is what separates the good performers from the great ones. The episode is still in syndication. You can watch it right now. Lucille Ball making 44 million people laugh on the same day she decided to end her marriage. You won't see the pain. You won't see the 5 minutes in the dressing room. You'll see Lucy Ricardo being funny. That's what she chose to give you. And that choice, transforming her worst day into her best work, is what separates the good performers from the great ones. Desi Arnaz watched that episode when it aired, and he watched it alone in his apartment. When the dinner party scene came on, he cried. He called her the next day. The conversation was brief. "I watched it," he said. "I know," she said. "You were extraordinary," he said. "Thank you," she said. They were quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." "Me too," she said. They stayed friends for the rest of their lives, not close friends, not the kind who saw each other regularly, but the kind who had been through something together that nobody else could understand. But that day, that Friday in March 1960, in those 5 minutes in her dressing room, Lucille Ball made a choice. She chose to show up. She chose to do the work even when her personal life was falling apart. That choice is the moment that defines what it means to be Lucille Ball. Not the fame, and not the success. The moment when everything is falling apart and you still walk back out there and make people laugh. That's the whole story. The rest is just what happened after. If this story reminded you that the strongest people are often the ones who are breaking in private while performing in public, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell. More stories about what it really means to be Lucille Ball are coming every single week.